What up, artists? My name is Dwayne Jones. I'm the creative director and founder of a lifestyle brand called Art Pays Me. This is the Art Pays Me podcast, and I'm passionate about finding ways that people like you and me can make a living for ourselves off of our creativity. And, maybe we can make the world a better place at the same time. Let's get into it. Welcome to Art Pays Me. Today, I have Bria Miller. Bria, welcome.
Hello, everybody.
So, what do you do?
So my actual full-time job is working at a place called the Khyber Center for the Arts. It's actually located in the NASCAD building downtown, but isn't NASCAD affiliated. We're like an artist-run center that does anti-oppressive focused like arts events and workshops and basically just programming in general. Whether it's like grassroots or with established artists or just community groups. I worked there. And then for the past while, I was working with Elizabeth Fry Society as well as a facilitator, but recently have stopped to stay at the Khyber. And then I work also as like a contracted artist in a bunch of ways. Like learning animation. I do graphic facilitation, which is like drawing what's happening at an event, like live on a really big piece of paper or another kind of medium. Do poetry, like spoken word, all kinds of things really. Painting, illustrations for books. That's what I've been doing a lot of digital art, especially since about April. I kind of like to try and do whatever and learn new skills always, especially if it's with other people.
So I guess it's like, what don't you do?
Kind of. It's like I guess like doing a little bit of everything comes from being a self-taught artist. And so I only started like doing and selling my art like more seriously about, I want to say like 4 to 5 years ago. When I was working at Alter Ego's Cafe on Gottingen Street. And because I was doing a lot of gig work where I would be called to kind of do random jobs a lot of the time when I left that barista job for stability and finances, I just kind of like dabbled in so many things like film and all kinds of stuff. So then that just kind of like expanded my skill set pretty naturally.
That's kind of where I came across you actually during that time period.
Yeah.
And you were even doing music too, right?
Yeah, true. I played in a band called Rabies. I play bass and do backup vocals, but we haven't played together for a while yet. And now I DJ as well too. So I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So, like, how are you coping through all of this, like pandemic, through the revolution that's happening?
Oh my gosh. I feel like most of my a lot of my focus has been really taking time and like resting, but also still getting the shit done, like still kind of being like slow and steady about how I'm moving forward on projects. Also like taking my time has been so important and has also meant that the quality of my work is improving a lot, which it's really cool to be able to notice how much I'm leveling up in terms of like digital art or even just like organizing online events because I've done it a few times, like things like that.
Right.
But also just like quality time with friends and loved ones when it's been possible and safe. That's been really keeping me together. But overall, I would say also just like creativity in general and like connecting with other artists because I'm like, I feel like I'm hearing everywhere that like, and have been for a while, especially in terms of like upheaval and like cases of injustice where people are talking about like how artists actually are the people who like uphold and tell history actually, like that we learn about history through photos and imagery and like media. And
Absolutely.
just kind of trying to take that really seriously, but also not put too much pressure on myself. Yeah, I guess has been really important, and connecting to other people about that too, like what they want to make, and finding ways to support that has been so good. Also has been like just really inspirational for me to make stuff because I've been taking such a backseat and more of an organizer the past few years because of Kyber. Yeah, have been like supporting other people to do workshops, whereas before when I was working for myself, I was yeah, on the front lines a lot more. So actually having space to make again for the first time, um, in like a long time feels also just like so good and nourishing, and also again lucky. Like I'm really grateful that I have a creative outlet, because I feel like if I did not, I don't think I would be as well. I don't think I would be as okay as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I get like I can see that with a lot of people who just are bored at the fact that they couldn't leave home for that long of a period of time, whereas some of
Yeah,
us like we're excited to have things to do at home. That
exactly. It's like I can pick up all the projects that I like kind of started but didn't actually get moving.
yeah.
I've done that so much. Yeah. Different like shrinky dink things I was making. I've been making all kinds of charms, all kinds of stuff that I've been picking up that I forgot about.
Hmm. Like one thing you mentioned too that I find interesting is that artists do document history. So like I took art history courses and I remember thinking that like wow, these are actually just like straight up history classes because they're really talking about what was going on in the culture at that time.
Hmm.
Now, that said, the vast majority of the history I learned was very Eurocentric. So it took a very specific stance. So I think what we're seeing today is going to be fascinating for people going forward because you're going to have way more diverse perspectives and not just one monoculture
Yeah,
deciding who, what voices were important at a certain time and stuff like that. So,
exactly. Or even like what the reality is for the time, right? Because it's like when we, even in like taking an art history class, I haven't ever taken an art history class. I've just, again, self taught, so have done it through my own research. But
hmm
um, yeah, and thinking about like how white voices are always focused on, it's like that is only one, like only a fraction of the reality that existed actually.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I think it's so important to hear like all of those juicy voices, youth, like anybody who's actually really like transparently speaking about like what they're feeling, how they're processing, like what can be done to help things that are happening right now too, you know?
hmm
Yeah, like solutions to so many issues are actually in people, in like the art that people are making.
Yeah.
So I hope you take that more seriously too.
Yeah. So I noticed like in a lot of your work, it often speaks about gender and race and women's like general like women being assaulted or being needing to be protected in some kind of way. um do you feel like your art is sort of intentionally making those statements, or is it sort of just something that naturally comes out of you?
I feel like it naturally comes out of me. But now, as I've had more experience in talking about my, like for a long time, because you're just kind of making with your head down, you know, I wasn't really thinking about like the themes that exist in my art, for example. But now that I've been talking about it for a few years, I'm kind of starting to realize, um, yeah, I definitely have a lot of, like I always like to say, there's always like a sprinkle of Black girl magic or like women's empowerment in my pieces. I think that comes from my own experiences of like feeling silenced or erased, or also just bad personal experiences I've had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, yeah, I guess when I create, there's like this motto that I've had since I've begun, which is to like encourage honesty. And so because those things feel very real for me, I know that they also are very real for other people. And so, um, yeah, just like knowing that there's a lot more movement to support like survivors of sexual assault or racism or all of these things now. Um, but yeah, as a youth and stuff, I didn't really see those things very much. And so I would create, I still do like create a lot of things that I would like to see or that I feel like I know were needed, like I maybe would have needed as a young person or when going through something specific. Yeah, so I always like to kind of plug in little affirmations or reminders of like strength, resilience, all of those things in whatever I make. Yeah, definitely usually pretty blackety black in anything I make. So yeah.
Yeah. And I see there's another topic related to that that's, I think, gets pushed under the rug a lot, but I see we're going to have to really confront it coming
Mhm,
up. And it's how Black women are treated by Black men.
mhm,
And we have to be uh, holding ourselves more accountable. So I was looking at the murder of Oluwatoyin Salau,
mhm,
and it's like, often like women like yourself, I often see at the forefront of making these kind of statements, and yet getting left behind when it comes to additional supports from
mhm.
everyone else. So I just want to say I applaud you for continuing to share your voice and doing that. Um,
Thank you.
s-
Um, yeah, it feels so important. I want to say like my like the urgency for me to like be uplifting women's voices is definitely amplified by working at the Elizabeth Fry Society. I worked there from um, 2018 until November of 2018. I actually started that job when I started at Khyber. I was working as a caseworker first, and then with all women who were coming from prison and being reintegrated into the community. And so I was helping them while they were living in a safe house, like get connected to resources and things. And that just like I already knew how how lacking the supports are for women who are abused or facing any kinds of violence, whether it's from police or somebody they're in a relationship with or whatever.
mhm,
Um, but working there actually just like illuminated it even more drastically, which then led to there being a program created through Status of Women Canada. It's called Creating Communities of Care, and it's actually still running. My coworker, or like past coworker, Sarah Tremblay runs it
mhm,
now. But yeah, essentially that program has been created to better support Black and like African Nova Scotian and Black uh, women who live in Nova Scotia, and also Mi'kmaq and Indigenous women who live here.
mhm.
Just knowing also that they're so disproportionately affected and punished by the system, especially often in cases of like asking for help. So yeah, working there like has definitely like lit a fire in my ass, like made me learn so much so fast. And I'm so grateful to that organization because yeah, it's definitely influenced my art. And yeah, I just wanted to share that because and also is like an amazing organization to support right now as well, because I know that their funding has been cut.
Mm.
But most of their clientele is Black and Indigenous women as well. Um,
Okay,
yeah, because of the way that the system is set up, unfortunately.
right.
Yeah.
So is that because, like, say, even when they do come forward, they're just not being like, you come forward because something happened and you're just
Hmm.
not getting that support that you would think you're supposed to get?
Yeah. Often in the cases, from my experience, it's like when Black women are often calling for help. If it's like a domestic situation, often when the officers arrive, they are arriving in a situation like in a in an attitude of escalation, full like they're just ready to escalate the situation and not actually support a lot of the time.
Okay.
Sometimes also they add insult to injury. Like I know too many cases of like women asking for help and then them facing further violence by the police, and then somehow they're the ones charged by the police when actually they were just like upset because they just dealt with some serious shit, or like something with their like they're emotional for a very valid reason,
Yeah.
and then it's taken out of context and then they're punished by the system for that. It's like so many stories of that. Um, in my experience, the police are not a sort of like a safety. They are very much a last resort. But then even in those last resort situations, it can be really dangerous for Indigenous women as well. I just know the experience of, being Black and calling the cops for like mental health or any of those kind of crisis situations as being actually usually more dangerous than not, sadly. But it's like the only option we have sometimes. It's really hard.
Right. And as we see with Chantal in New Brunswick and Regis in
Mm-hmm.
Toronto.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny.
Uh, so you're based in Halifax now,
Mm-hmm.
and where'd you grow up?
I was born and I grew up in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. I like to call it the tip of the province or the tip of the world, like about 3.5 hours from Halifax. I lived there until I was in grade 12, and then I moved basically as soon as I could. For safety of coming out, but also, there's just not many job prospects there at all.
Right. You strike me as someone who is pretty reserved and soft spoken. Were you like a shy, precocious child?
Actually, funny thing is, as a kid, I was not. I was very. Like, I guess I would be in certain contexts, like if I didn't really know somebody. But I was actually like very loud. Very loud, pretty like obnoxious is the word I would use. Pretty extra. I don't know. I'm an Aries, so people don't usually read that from me. But when I was a kid, I was a lot louder, kind of mean. Also, I
Oh,
think kind of what made me start to be quiet because I was like, oh shit, you need to stop talking and actually just listen to what's going on around you and not,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
But you know what? I'm glad you said that because to know you today, I would never think of you as a mean girl in any capacity. Um,
Yeah, I get that a lot actually. It's like it's kind of like because I was totally the kid that was like friends with kids who were considered outcasts. Like I was kind of friends with everybody, but
mm,
then at the same time would have my mean spells where something shitty was happening in my life, so I was mean to people around me.
mm-hmm,
And as my grandmother says, hurt people. And I started to realize that, and I was like, oh, this does not feel good,
mm-hmm.
and learned a lot from that. I feel, yeah.
Yeah, and it's good because people need room to grow, and sometimes it's like the people, I guess, who experience things or dished out things even
Yeah.
are the ones who come around and know like from experience what it's like on the other side so that they can grow and evolve into different people.
Yeah,
uh,
so true. And like that learning is like in your body, so you carry it with you. You can't forget it. That's the
yeah.
most part. Yeah.
So do you ever see yourself like zeroing in on one particular specialty, or is that just impossible for your brain to fathom?
Every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, I think I really want to do this one thing. But actually, because I'm so interested in, like, I love gaining new skills. So realistically, I don't think that would actually be the case.
Mm,
Um, I am really loving though, like making digital art. And I really like I love illustration and book illustration so much. I love how that process is, and I love like being home and really getting to like bring a story to life and just like chill and sit with it for like days on end. Um, yeah, so that kind of work is really awesome. But then I also really love like physical stuff that requires more like body movement. Um, yeah, I feel like also all the different art mediums give me a different. It's just yeah, I feel like they're all just different kind of. They're just different kinds of outlets, really. So they give a different kind of soothing.
Mm,
Uh, so it just all depends, really. I kind of just try to go with the flow and listen to the body and what it needs, you know.
right.
Yeah.
Have you found that uh, since Black Lives Matter, all of a sudden, uh,
Mm.
have you found like a new influx of people interested in you?
Oh hell yeah! It is. It's actually kind of jarring. Because I've been selling Black Lives Matter art since I started. Yeah, about 4 years ago.
Mm,
I would sell it like at markets, on the street on Gottingen, like during the North by Night market and stuff. I would actively watch white families like pull their kids away from my table if they read that,
hmm
like scoff at me actively,
hmm
like, and then walk away.
Yep.
Um, or just be like looking through everything and then see that look up at me and then awkwardly like kind of slink away. Like so much of that. Um, but then also a weird thing is that I made a Black Lives Matter, like a new piece. I had just opened up an online store on June 1st,
Mm,
which is very new for me, but really exciting. I have a lot of stuff to sell from over the years. But yeah, I made a new print, and have had the most sales that I've ever had, like the most interest I've ever had, in a piece ever, actually.
wow.
Um, and it's wild because it's mostly white people buying it, a lot of white businesses. And it is not a poster that just says Black Lives Matter. It also says like defund police, protect, support, uplift Black folks. So it's like not just a bunch of white people buying this poster that says Black Lives Matter, but it's also people that are very openly down for like declaring to defund the police, which is actually really dope, but
Yeah.
kind of overwhelming at the same time. Um, yeah, like the outpouring of support can be really good, but then every once in a while can definitely be weird. Like I've had a few messages from like white strangers, not a few actually, like many from white strangers, like demanding emotional labor of me or like asking how they can make their businesses anti-racist, like without even a hello. Like,
hmm
um, yeah, just like very weird um, entitled expressions of like them feeling entitled to my emotions,
hmm
or like what I think without even knowing me. Um,
Right.
so that's kind of like the double-edged sword. But also then like the performative part of it all is like it's hard to know if the people buying these posters and saying Black Lives Matter, like if they actually are down to like live into what that means actually. So I'm really curious about that. But it's definitely exciting to see people I haven't really seen, having conversations about race like that. It's the first time that I've seen like some of my family members that are white talk about it,
hmm
or even just like not when said Black Lives Matter, but to actually be posting it is like, and like a few years ago, they were like mad at me about just having a post that said it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's a weird time to
Yeah.
be an observer, I'll say.
It definitely is. It's emotionally taxing in a way
Yeah.
because like you're feeling grateful in one sense, like, wow, does this mean like real change is actually happening? But if you've been doing this for a few years, then you kind of remember the times when people were mad at you for posting pro-black stuff.
Hmm.
And it's like, is this authentic or is this like a clout chase?
Exactly.
Uh,
Or like a knee jerk reaction out of guilt. Like, where is
yeah,
it from? Is what I just keep wondering. But I'm trying to give some space and be patient from afar to let
yeah,
people figure out where they're at and like learn what they need to learn, you know? Because we all gotta have a moment.
Same here, and that's where I'm at too. It's like you said with earlier with that growth moment. It's for some people, the growth comes at different points. So I'm really trying to be gracious with folks and be like, okay, maybe they just had a moment that they that light switch went off, and now they're ready to go forward, and I gotta give them space to let them do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like knowing that it's not my responsibility to make sure that they like learn the things, but then also like just giving space and kind of trying to trust that people are going to do their best to learn the things and like be writing their counselors and do the things that they should be doing. Um, yeah, and like also still feeling that urgency at the same time, but yeah, I got like trying to keep it slow and steady because it's like an ongoing fight. It's not just right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
seeing a lot of like organizations and light artists like reacting in ways that feel very temporary. And I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about longevity. Like this is a long haul. Actually, it's not just this week, you know?
yeah, exactly, exactly. So you're self-taught, but obviously you've seen art at some kind before that led you to the path you're on. What are some of your influences, or who are some of your influences?
Oh, totally. I was very lucky to in Yarmouth when I was in junior high. Um, our, our junior high was like really close to a high school, and so the art room was positioned right next to like a woodworking studio, and then the person who taught us art also taught like what was called tech ed, so it's like where you learn how to do woodworking stuff. But anyway, all that to say, like I had a really awesome teacher in junior high who got us really well acquainted with that art room, but also um, like all the facilities that the high school students used. And they were also both so supportive of me, and like just using that space whenever I needed. I could go there after school whenever. So then that was in junior high, it was like introduced to me and I took art class.
Hmm.
That was kind of how I spent time there. But then when I got to high school, I took art 10 or whatever, just standard art. But then I took it again. I took it like every year actually,
Right.
just to have access actually to that studio because it was the first place that I was able to actually really play with a ton of mediums. Like I got to use concrete, for example, charcoal. There was an IB art class, so like an advanced art class also in that room. So we had access to just so many different materials so that they could also get used to using them before they went to NASCAD and stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, so the man was named Mr. Baldwin when I was in high school. He was my teacher and was so supportive. Actually, nudged me to do my first painting um, as a way to raise money for me to go to university because I wanted to be a teacher. And so I did this really, really big abstract painting. Actually, have not been paid for it still.
Oh no.
Supposed to pay me. Now that's on the record, but yeah, I did a really big like abstract painting that I worked on all year. And then that got me really into painting. But then after I left, I didn't really make any art at all, really, again, until I would like doodle on napkins and stuff when I worked retail before working at Alter Egos. So I was just kind of drawing and doodling on stuff. Um, yeah, it was mostly, and then I was working at Alter Egos um, a few years ago, and I basically started hand drawing these little like stickers of different cartoon characters. I would like take a lot of cartoon characters and basically just make them black. So like Powerpuff Girls with little Afro puffs, or like Arnold from Hey Arnold, or yeah, basically just any black character you could think of, but then also some of the white ones turned black. And I made, yeah, a bunch of stickers and little drawings, and I was selling them at Alter Egos Cafe on Gottingen Street, owned by Michelle Strum, when I was working there, which is actually where I met you the first time.
Yes.
Um, And one day Michelle was like, I showed her like a drawing that I was working on that was larger, like just casually on my phone. And she was like, you should sell art on the walls here. Like very, very casual. And I was just like, well, I never even thought of that. Yeah, she's like, you should just have an art show. And then like a few weeks later, I was like, oh, like I didn't have actually a body of work at that point. But then that kind of lit a fire under my ass again to make some stuff to actually be able to put up on the walls. So I did that. We had an art opening, which was really sweet. And a bunch of beautiful friends and community members came. I remember the Khyber, like Hannah, the director, who's still the director of the Khyber now, was really supportive and was like, how can I support you? Even back then, which is really lovely to think about. And yeah, basically, I think it was only maybe 5 or 6 months after that, I ended up leaving the cafe to do my art full time. And that would have been when kind of what I was referencing earlier, like when I did a lot of different odd jobs. Because I straight up I just quit and kind of threw myself into the fire and was like, I'm gonna make this work. I don't know how yet. This is terrifying, but it's worth it. Like it felt really right.
Right.
Yeah, just trying to trust my intuition. And yeah, that's kind of how this has all started. And over time, I've just kind of, yeah, I feel like when I started making art at Alter Egos, also Julia Hutt, who is known now for her really beautiful drawings of like mothers, and often she's a white woman, but also draws like a lot of women of color, and Black women in particular.
And always did too, from what I remember.
Yeah, exactly. But like not in a performative way, like
Yeah,
actually
just legit.
like in relationship with these people, and because they're like beautiful images actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we started actually making art around the same time, so we would encourage each other. Like I was with her when she made the first aquaculture stickers at Radstorm.
Wow.
Radstorm has helped me so much. They helped me like make my first prints I ever made and my first stickers as well. I used the People's Photocopier is what it's called. It's like a by donation photocopier that's at Radstorm. That's really awesome. Yeah, I feel like ever since I kind of got to Alter Egos, everything just kind of branched from there. And I've also, because that place is such a hub for so many creative people, have met so many people too who I've got to collaborate with, which has been so awesome. Like I got to interview Lance Sampson from Aquaculture the other week on Every Seeker's Instagram Live, for example. Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, so many collaborations.
That's actually true too, because I remember when I went there, I was like, it kind of lit a fire under me just hanging out in there too, because of like all the dope creatives that just kind of happened to hang out, just just happened to be there
With their laptops, doing their thing, drinking their coffee. Yeah. It's such a good energy to be around.
Yeah, just like random. So like, what do you find is the biggest challenge in when you started saying, I'm going to pursue this creative life? What was the hardest part of it?
Oh, wow. To be honest, I want to say the hardest part, the first answer that came to my mind was like navigating the whiteness in all of the art spaces that I had to use. Because like that meant like having like really intense anxiety before like entering a space that I had to go work in. Like thinking about all the like micro or not aggressions that are in like interactions with like people who I'm asking for support. Yeah, I feel like just kind of like not being able to escape whiteness, but still knowing that I have to do the work anyway. I think for me has been the hardest thing. Luckily, because of all the collaborations and people I know, I found a really good support network, especially of like Black and BIPOC artists. Like I know now that I have so many people I could call on if something messed up happened, or
Mm-hmm.
but especially when I was younger, I definitely took a few jobs that were like supposed to be social justice oriented, but actually felt like to me that they caused more harm than reducing it. I get
Mm,
kind of performative projects, where
right.
white people are like well intentioned, quote unquote, but um, aren't really thinking about actually the supports that they'll put in place to make somebody that doesn't look like them feel comforted or like supported to actually even act on what their ideas are. Um,
Mm,
yeah, I faced a lot of like a lot of policing, micromanaging, but luckily I'm not experiencing that anymore. Very happy to say, or at least like not as often. Definitely not through Kyber, luckily.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's changed my life honestly to like actually feel really supported and um, like I don't have to worry so much about like what my ideas are or if they're okay or like if they're I don't know academic enough or all that shit.
Right.
Like, yeah, I'm not jump like of course still we all battle with like some forms of like imposter syndrome. I think still in the work that we do, I feel like a lot of Black artists will especially again because of like how inescapable the like standards of like white art are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll be okay as
So
long as we're there for each other. Yeah.
I found two things in there interesting. So um A, would it be like imposter syndrome from being self-taught? And a lot of in these white spaces, a lot of them were not self-taught.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes that is the case.
Okay.
Sometimes it's also just like my own personal shit, like sometimes your mental health will just be kind of off, and then like the subtle racism part just kind of amplifies the shitty feeling.
Mm,
But yeah, it's like definitely sometimes because I don't even talk about my art, for example, in a really academic way, like I'm very matter of fact about it.
hmm.
Um, yeah, I definitely like sometimes doubt myself in the way that I explain things or um, yeah, yeah.
Well, as someone who's taken a bunch of those classes, it doesn't matter. So fuck
That's what I always try to tell myself when I'm doing pep talks, honestly. And
Yeah.
I've been told that so many times by people who have like graduated from MassCAD or like other really intense programs. They're just like, it's fine, things that you need to know. And you're like always learning. That's actually what matters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then
Thank
the oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. Um, and then the other side of it is, I guess, the black side. So one thing I've experienced, which I doubt would happen now, but I'm not that old. So I mean, it should never have happened in my career, in the span of my career anyway. But I've definitely had things where if I used a person of color in an ad, I was told to make the person white instead because we're trying
What?
to appeal to a
Sorry.
certain audience. Yep.
What?
I mocked up a now this is just a mock-up. This wasn't the real thing. I just mocked up a magazine cover for a client and
Mhm.
used my face. And they were like, well, it's not a hip hop magazine. I'm like, the fuck is
What?
that supposed to mean? Um, so like these different things play out very now the funny thing is though with the one who told me not to use a person of color, all my communication with them was via email, so
Yeah,
they had
exactly.
no idea because again they don't expect, you think of a graphic designer, you automatically the default is a white male. And
Mhm.
they didn't they probably would have changed out their tone if they knew who was behind the computer.
Yeah.
um, but like situations like that I've reflected on now, and I'm like, I was so scared to push back. I was pissed, but I was scared to push back in those situations. And I like today, oh Listen.
Now we got time. We have time to address the things. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, but like, yeah, these kind of subtle things, like, um,
The wild thing is, though, they think that they're being subtle. That is not subtle. This is not a hip hop cover. Are you serious?
oh yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that was very like straight up, and I really should have stung him for that one, and I regret that I didn't.
You got receipts? Hold
Yeah.
on. Oh.
But like I could see, so in your art, are you ever like feeling like people are uncomfortable because you feature so many like women of different skin tones in your work?
I feel like when I first started out, like especially doing different commissions for certain organizations, I definitely faced a little bit of that, but it was like super subtle. It was like most like for example, sometimes I would include like a crying person and then being comforted in a drawing of like a group of people on purpose.
Hmm.
Like I've had people like ask me to like change the expression or like lighten the skin tone at the like when I first started.
Mm.
Or like, and usually the way that they phrase it is to like because they don't want to appear as if they're forcing diversity. Is usually the kind how they word it. I'm like, huh, interesting.
Nice one, nice one.
Yeah. But I haven't actually encountered it in a while. Waiting for the next one. It's bound to happen, honestly. But yeah, luckily haven't dealt with any of that shit in a while. Um, Hopefully won't. Ugh. Yeah,
Hmm.
I wonder also though. I'm like, yes, I'm a black person, but also because I'm light skinned, I wonder also if white people accept that representation more from me as well. So
Hmm.
also just want to mention that as well. Like I know that often my art would be seen as more palatable to white people, even though it has very intense messages in it. It's like I know that that is also part of the truth. So also want to name that too. Um, yeah, I feel like I would be called out a lot less than um, like darker folks often.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
like targeted less for sure. Which is also why I just want to speak out so much because I hate that people have to deal with that.
Right, right.
Just making for drawing people as they look like it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, colorism is real,
Mhm.
uh, beyond just race.
Yeah.
Uh, Man, so what's uh what's a piece of advice you would give an artist like who's wants to pursue this lifestyle?
The first quote that I think of is actually not my words, but it is a quote that I lean on a lot, which is from a like a black queer writer. Her name was Audre Lorde, and the quote is, "Your silence will not protect you."
Ooh.
Um, for me, like if I'm feeling that imposter syndrome, if I'm like feeling frozen or like my voice isn't important, like if I'm doubting that,
Hmm.
that quote, also it's a whole text, by the way, so you can go read it later, little plug again. But yeah, your silence will not protect you is like a phrase that has stayed with me if I need to write, if I need to paint, if I need to like have a hard conversation. Um, Really, yeah, I just like want to encourage people to like stay true to their values and their experiences, to not like gaslight themselves because of how messed up the world is around us. Um, like to know that their experiences are valid and also that it's like so valuable to, if you feel comfortable, share your gift that is like creation with the world actually. Because like we were saying at the beginning of our conversation, like artists actually shape history. Like we get to decide actually which stories get told, like what histories get uplifted and remembered. So like right now, like we can actually decide to start doing that work. Um, yeah, that's I guess. I feel like I just want to incite people to act with their art, especially if there are like reasons you can't show up to rallies or what have you. Yeah, there's so many different ways that you can support a lot of the like activism and really, really important land defending and like fighting against police brutality that's happening just from like the comfort of your home or with like a paintbrush, actually. Yeah, I just want to encourage that.
Nice. You know what? So this is just coincidence, by the way, but I'm looking at my old sketchbook from 2016, and it has one of your stickers on it. And the quote on it is, "I am not too much of a person to hold. My voice, my experience is entirely valid." So you've been thinking that for a while, and you know what?
That's one of the first stickers I ever made, actually, when I was working at Alter Egos, and I've made it a few times more.
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
I actually print made of that quote yesterday too, so I'll be selling them soon.
Nice.
Yeah, well, but it's funny that it came full circle. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead. Here's the other thing is, so I designed a shirt that has a similar quote in 2018 or 17. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, shit, that's where I got it from.
Hey now, where's my money? No.
My bad.
I'm just happy that the message is like carrying on, honestly. That is like what makes me so happy.
Right.
I'm trying to like learn a little bit about like how me doing that through the cafe and stuff has impacted other artists and encouraged them to start their craft too. So like that stories like this have been coming to me recently. So it's actually really comforting to know that like conversations that I had like quite a while ago have actually like blossomed into something else. Yeah, I feel no kind of way about that except excited, to be honest. Just so you know.
Okay. Well, Bria, how can people find you online?
I feel like I don't really use my Facebook very often. I mostly just use it to keep in contact with my family. So I would say Instagram is probably the best way. My Instagram tag is @encouraginghonesty. And I also have an online shop that I just started June 1st. It has like the Black Lives Matter prints that I referenced and a bunch of other stuff. Soon it will have jewelry too. And you can find that at www.briamakesthings.bigcartel.com. Yeah, and I feel like those are my main contact.
All right, folks, you hear that? So I've been sending people your way because I don't plan to make anything like that anytime soon. So I was like, I know someone who's already doing it. Hit up Bria. Yeah, and you know what? I feel that with the Facebook. People keep adding me on Facebook, but I don't really add strangers.
Yeah.
Like I just use it for family.
Yeah.
So yeah, hit me up on Instagram. That's where I'm at. Yeah. So Bria, thanks for doing Art Pays Me, and I think people get something out of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. It's good to connect with you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Pays Me podcast. Thank you to Langy Beats for the theme music. If you got anything out of this show, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. The more you do this, the more reach the podcast gets, and the more artists I can help learn to make a living at what they love. If you want to know more about what I do, hit me up at artpaysme.com or at artpaysme on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. See y'all next time.